In today's episode of Can We Talk About Your WordPress Projects, we're going to talk about your proposal versus a master services agreement versus a contract. What does that all mean? How should you structure these documents? And how is the best way to structure these documents so that you can set the proper client expectations? But before we do that, let me just check my notes. I wanted to tell you what I've decided to do during this last week of 2020, because I want to help you prepare for improving your agency in 2021. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go live every day this week with the 5 most important areas that you need to focus on for 2021. It's a series within a series, because our series is Can We Talk About Your WordPress Projects? So this is a little mini series called the 5 Days of Focus. And so we're going to devise a plan for improving your WordPress agency in 2021 when it comes to project management. And we call that continuous improvement. Now, today we're covering the proposal versus the MSA versus the contract and how best to set client expectations. Tomorrow, we will cover how we talk about a content first approach all the time, especially a development approach, but how does that actually save you money? So that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. On Wednesday, we're going to dive deep into how to define project scope, the stuff that's in scope, the stuff that's out of scope, the stuff that's your responsibility, the stuff that's the client's responsibility, and how to lay that out in your documentation. On Thursday, we're going to talk about why approval doesn't matter. That's just kind of a play on words, but we'll talk about that on Thursday. And then Friday, we'll go over an entire plan for 2021 so that you can implement process improvement, maybe on those things you haven't fashioned yet, or things that you have fashioned, like say your proposal, but it just needs to be revisited and tweaked. You know, you should probably revisit your proposal document at least once a year to make any changes. And later on in this presentation, I'm going to show you an easy way to keep up to date with things that should be in your proposal or your contract. So let's get into today's topic. So this is day 1 of the 5 days of focus, and we're going to talk about your proposal. But first, let's get some definitions out of the way. Okay, when I say MSA, I mean Master Services Agreement. And those are the things that don't change from project to project, like your processes, your payment schedule, how you deal with website security, and then the legalese that makes it a legal document. And that you have to get from your attorney. Now, some people might also call that the contract, but I'll tell you why I don't call that the contract in just a moment. Then we've got the proposal, and those are the things that are specific to a project, such as your business requirements, the scope of that project, what are your time and cost estimates, and it has some legalese in it, but less than the normal amount of legalese. So both of these documents together, the Master Services Agreement and the proposal together, they both end up being your contract because they both have things that the client is agreeing to. Your MSA are those things that don't change from time to time, and the proposal are the things that are specific to a project. I got this idea from Nathan Ingram. I had been to many of his WordCamp talks and just started listening to him more carefully. And then when he came out with his Monster Contracts product, I decided that this was the best way to go. The advantages to using these as separate documents is that it's easier for the client to digest. Now, I know that Shanta asked a question earlier about how do you present this, and she had one situation where the client was overwhelmed by having all this documentation. But you don't necessarily need to present the MSA unless the proposal is accepted, or they're at least leaning towards, you feel very good that they are going to accept the proposal. Remember, I never, ever, ever think it's a good idea to leave a proposal with a client, to send a proposal to a client and let them review it on their own, because they'll focus on things you don't want them to focus on, and they won't focus on the things they need to focus on. So that's why every single proposal, in my opinion, deserves a walkthrough. And so it's kind of a back and forth with the MSA and the proposal, because both of those documents refer to one another. But you can present the proposal without presenting the MSA. When the proposal is accepted or you're trying to close the deal, you will need to go over the MSA as well. The other advantage is that the MSA can stay in force even when there are multiple projects with separate proposals. So it kind of lays the groundwork for doing future work for the client. And that MSA, because those things don't change unless your MSA has changed since the last time you dealt with this client, there's no need to have that document signed again later. It ends up being way less work for you for each project because you're only doing the proposal part, the things that change, and those other things you don't have to worry about tweaking them for every project. And the other thing, the big thing is it sets you apart as a professional, because it lets your client know that you are aware of project bottlenecks and issues and things that come up on every single project, but you already have plans in place to control those things and to address those things. So what should be in the MSA or the contract part? You can call it whatever you want to. I got master services agreement from Nathan, but you can call it whatever you want to. You could call it the contract, just making it clear within the document that the contract really consists of both the MSA and the proposal. So what should be in there? Well, you need your communication plan. How should communication take place? Do you have certain working hours? Are you off on the weekends? Are you available at night if there's an emergency? All of that needs to be in your communication plan, and that needs to be in your master services agreement. This is about setting boundaries with your client, but also letting them know that you have a specific set of hours that you're available for them, especially once you get through with the project and you're into the care plan or the maintenance plan. You need to, of course, this is my big one, change management. You need to have that process in your contract, that they're agreeing to follow your change management process. You need your acceptance management process. Now, for those who don't know, we don't use the word approval. Sometimes we use it, but we really mean acceptance, because we believe in establishing your acceptance criteria before you create the deliverable. So if the deliverable is the website, you're going to have a set of acceptance criteria. And if what you deliver meets that acceptance criteria, approval doesn't matter. They're accepting it based on what was already agreed on. Content management. How are you going to handle content first? Risk and issues management. And this is one that a lot of people leave out. But one of the biggest risks to every project is the content collection bottleneck. And if you don't call that out as a risk at the beginning of the project, and the reason you can put that in your contract as opposed to the proposal is because it is a risk on every single project. But this is the management plan to manage both the risks and the issues. Your requirements definition process. How are you going to handle the deep dive? When are you going to provide a more precise estimate after getting all the details, which you can't possibly do in that first meeting? Frequently asked questions. This is a real time saver. When you're getting asked the same questions over and over, or if there's just some knowledge information you want to educate your client with, you can pose that as a frequently asked question and get your point across and set the proper expectation. And then you're going to need that legalese that's provided by your attorney. By including these processes in your master services agreement, you have the opportunity to set the right expectations and to also address any pushback that you might have from the client. And all of this sets you apart from your competition. In a minute, I'm going to tell you how you can get the details and examples of how to include these processes in your documents. But we've looked at the contract part, the master services agreement. Now let's look at the proposal and how these two documents would refer to one another. So your typical proposal sections, the main sections, are the ask, the project scope, the proposed solution, and the time and cost estimate. That's really all that should be in your proposal for the most part. There's a few others, and I'll tell you about those in a second. So in your business requirements section, I'm going to tell you how you can get some more information about what should actually be in this section. These are not the only things that should be in this section, but in this section where you're describing what the business requirements are for this website project, then this is probably going to refer back to your requirements definition process that's in your master services agreement. In your project scope, you're probably going to refer back to your change management plan and your acceptance, well, I should say process, and your acceptance management process that's in your master services agreement. And then the proposed solution, you're most likely going to refer back to your acceptance management plan, because if you're including deliverables in that proposed solution, as we do recommend breaking the job down into individual deliverables, then you're going to need acceptance criteria for each one of those deliverables. So you're going to need to refer back to your acceptance management process in your master services agreement so that that clarifies any things that might not be understood from the way you're presenting the proposed solution. And then, of course, your time and cost estimate. And here's where you may refer to your change management process. That includes your change budget. Now, there are a few other sections that you may want to consider using in your proposal that takes setting client expectations properly a little bit further. And those sections are required management resources, team roles and responsibilities, and the project acceptance criteria. This is the acceptance criteria for the entire project. So your required management resources, this sets the role of the project sponsor and the project manager. The project sponsor is usually the client, whichever client individual is in charge. And the project manager is usually you, plus any other management roles that have been determined for this particular project. It sets the client's expectation about their involvement. You know, they tend to think that they're going to hand all this off to you. You're going to go away for a month and come back with a finished website. And that's just not the case. You require their input and approval cycles and all of that as you're creating this website. For the team roles and the responsibilities, one reason I do this in the proposal and not in the master services agreement, because you're going to include all the roles on a project, and that may be filled by only one or two individuals. So what you're doing is you're educating the client on what's involved in creating a website. What are the skills they're paying for? But you're doing it in a subtle way because you're listing all the roles and responsibilities, and then you're indicating who the individuals are that are going to be filling those roles. And they're generally not a one-to-one correspondence. You know, you may have SEO analyst. Well, if you're doing the SEO, you're not only the website developer, but you're also the SEO analyst, but that's a completely separate role. We tend to bundle those things together, but the client doesn't know what all those skills are that you're bringing to the table. So by including the team roles and responsibilities in your proposal, you can really drive that point home. So it sets the proper client expectation regarding your skill set. It increases the respect they have for you. You know, we complain all the time about clients don't understand or respect what is involved in building a website. And so by including this in your proposal, it goes a long way towards increasing that respect. And then it sets the proper client expectations, once again, regarding their role and their responsibilities. You know, another thing we complain about a lot is keeping the client in their own lane. They want to become a designer, they want to become a developer and start hedging over into your area. And so by establishing these in the proposal, you can drive home the point that we all have skills and we're all going to respect each other's skills, and that they need to stay in their own lane without saying, please stay in your own lane. And then project acceptance criteria, you want to include that in your proposal because you're agreeing up front what done means. So there's no ambiguity as to when the project ends. And because you've established a set of acceptance criteria that acts like a checklist, then there's none of that last minute, oh, but I thought it was going to do this. And why isn't this there? And why isn't that there? Or I'd like to add this at the last minute. That really does away with that because you've already established that acceptance criteria. Okay, so we've got some comments and questions over here. Shanta says, I might even add a frequently asked question to the MSA to explain the differences between the MSA contract and proposal. Right, and you might have to do that. It's all about educating the client. And so Michael was saying that he's wondering how much can be pulled out and added as either pages or posts on your website. Hey, that's a good idea, Michael. I mean, you could refer folks to those things on your website. You could include that as part of when you're doing the proposal questionnaire, where you're gathering those initial requirements just to come up with the proposal. So you could do some of that there. So where you do this is not necessarily should be these two documents and only these two documents. We're always so worried that the client's not going to read it. The client's not going to read it. But if you follow my best practice of never, ever leaving a proposal with a client and doing a walkthrough of these documents, which should probably take no longer than 2 hours. And if somebody says, oh, 2 hours, that's a long time. It's really not when you're talking. Websites are important. 2 hours to spend going over the proposal for the website and how we're going to work together is really not that long. I mean, we've had some of these meetings. Of course, this was for much bigger projects with much bigger deliverables like software. We've had these meetings last for 5 and 6 hours before. So to go over every minute detail, but that is not usually the case on a WordPress website. And then Shanta says she was thinking about this too, considering adding a page in regard to accessibility and the Ontario guidelines for that, the Canada guidelines, and what makes a good client, who does what, etc. Michael was saying about the roles and responsibility. Exactly. If you want to include a section on what makes a good website client, you can certainly do that. I was warned when I was talking to someone about doing this, one of the things you have to be careful about is to not sound condescending or this is how you need to behave in order to be a good client. It could just come across the wrong way. So you have to be really careful how you go about doing that. So now I promised you that I would tell you how to get more details about how to include this information in your proposal documents. But first, let's review what we covered in this little live training. So your proposal and your master services agreement are best presented as separate documents. That just makes it easier for you, and it makes the proposal much shorter and easier for the client to digest. But you don't want to overwhelm them either and just hand them over these multi-page documents and say, tell me what you think. You can get your proposal almost approved or even approved before you go over the MSA. I'm not saying that they sign the proposal and then you go over the MSA and maybe they have an issue with something that's in there. So, but they can't back out because they've already signed the proposal. It doesn't work that way. It's a joint thing. They're signed at the same time, typically. The master services agreement should include all the things that don't change and the things that you want in there to set the proper client expectations. The proposal should contain only the project specifics, the things that change from project to project. And when you combine both those documents together, that's your contract with the client. And the information you present in these documents, of course, is what helps you set the proper client expectations. And this is just a layout, just a short review of the MSA has your processes, frequently asked questions, and legalese provided by your attorney. The proposal has the high-level solution and the supporting procedures that support the processes. So in some cases, you'll need to detail in your proposal a few steps that adhere to your process that you covered in the MSA. And then there will be some legalese also in your proposal, but way less than in the MSA. So both these documents refer to one another where that's applicable. So the details for how to put both of these things in your documents is in the WP Project Managers Academy. Now, I'm going to do this really quick because most of you have heard this a million times, but you can join this for free. All the detail about all of that can be found at wproadmaps.com/join us. One reason I wanted to mention the Academy is that I'm in the process of updating all the lessons and downloads in both the PM 101 roadmap and the complete project management roadmap for WordPress, which is the premium program, to reflect this 2-document method that I described in this live today. So if you want to make absolutely sure that you don't miss those updates and you're not already a member, I invite you to join the WP Project Managers Academy. And then don't forget, you can also get certified as a certified WordPress project manager level 1 within the free program. And then there will be a level 2 certification for the premium program. So if you're already a student in the Academy, watch the group or watch your email and I'll let you know when those updates are finished. The goal is to have this completely updated before the new year dawns. So that's my goal. That's my accountability that I'm letting you guys know about. And if you want to download a full copy of a done-for-you master services agreement that you can take and modify to add your own processes to, and to get regular updates on new and relevant information to consider including in your proposal and your master services agreement, then you might want to consider the monster contracts. Now, if you join the premium membership of the Academy, you can get a 20% discount on monster contracts. The coupon code is within the course. And this is the tool that we recommend for setting up your contract and proposal and keeping on top of what might be changing in our field that needs to be covered in your legal documents. Nathan Ingram is the one that created this product. He's been doing this for 20 some odd years. So with his Monster Contracts product, most of it's already there. Most of the gotchas are already there because he's already been got and he's already figured out how to prevent the gotchas. What's great about it is as things change and things morph, when he changes his contract, then you get the benefit of the changes that he's making. For example, accessibility. If you need to have statements about your accessibility in your contract, you might want to look at the way that Nathan is handling that. The same thing is true for these new Google Core Web Vitals, if you are making any processes or disclaimers about that. So Richard says he loves the idea of separating the MSA and proposal will definitely help streamline the process. Yes, it definitely does. Now let me stop sharing. We're going to go live every day this week. I'm not sure of the exact time, and I may be starting to use a different streaming service called StreamYard, because that's going to allow me to stream to the group and to my regular Facebook business page and to YouTube at the same time, which will be a big time saver for me. So tomorrow, we're going to talk about how a content-first development approach saves you money. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking about how to define project scope. On Thursday, why approval doesn't matter. And on Friday, we're going to be talking about an overall plan for 2021 to focus on the things you need to focus on and process improvement for 2021. We're all looking to improve, are we not? So that's all I have for you today. I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, stay productive, stay strong, and never stop learning. See you tomorrow.